Hello and welcome to UzReport World News, and my name is Bahram Ghafarov. The Uzbek and Hungarian sides agreed to cooperate in the nuclear industry and water management as President Shavkat Mirziyoyev and the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban inked a joint declaration on strategic partnership on Tuesday.
The sides signed more than 10 documents in total, aimed at strengthening cooperation in a range of fields. Among them, the Intergovernmental Agreement on Interregional Cooperation, the Program of Cooperation between the Foreign Ministers for 2021-2023, the Memorandum of Understanding between the Institute for Strategic and Interregional Studies, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Trade of Hungary, the Agreement on Cooperation in the Field of Labor Relations, the Memorandum of Understanding on Training in the Nuclear Industry, on Cooperation in the Field of Innovation, the Program of Cooperation in the Field of Culture, the Roadmap for the Development of Cooperation in the Fields of Agriculture, Food Products and Animal Husbandry, Framework Agreement on Cooperation in the Field of Water Management. Shavkat Mirziyoyev and Viktor Orban visited the Uzbek-Hungarian Scientific Potato Growing Center in the Tashkent region. The institution was established in cooperation with the Hungarian University of Agriculture and Natural Sciences on the basis of a system of knowledge and innovation in agriculture. Uzbekistan currently imports around 300,000 tons of consumer and 17,000 tons of seed potatoes. The new center aims to test Hungarian varieties and produce seed potatoes. A comprehensive quality assurance system is to be developed for the entire potato production process by crossing Hungarian and Uzbek varieties. More than 50 varieties are to be localized and the potato gene pool is to be improved. Innovative methods would increase the yield by 30 to 50%. By 2024, domestic potatoes would completely replace imports.
Senior trade officials from the United States met on Tuesday with their counterparts from Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Tajikistan and Turkmenistan on a range of trade issues, underscoring their desire to strengthen trade ties among countries in the region and with the United States.
Participants in the meeting of the U.S. Central Asia Trade and Investment Framework Agreement also discussed the importance of digital trade for achieving broad-based inclusive economic growth and innovation, they say in a joint statement. The officials agreed to focus on ensuring the free flow of information across borders, transparency, competition and non-discrimination, and to include women, small-medium enterprises and other stakeholders in shaping new policies. They affirmed the TIFA as a valuable mechanism to strengthen trade and investment ties and agreed to meet in Central Asia for the next meeting in 2022. One key topic was the lapse of duty-free treatment under the U.S. Generalized System of Preferences, a trade waiver program that expired at the end of last year. U.S. officials explained key themes of the Biden administration's trade policy, including with respect to labor, environment and climate concerns, and the equitable distribution of the benefits of trade to underserved communities.
Uzbekistan's state hydropower producer and developer Uzhydroenergo has announced the commissioning of Zarchop hydropower plant after a 4-year construction project. The project was completed on time despite the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and has started to satisfy industrial and commercial demand for electricity in Surkhandarya region, the organization said in a statement. This project is one of several ongoing investment projects to construct new hydropower plants and modernize existing ones. It's part of Uzbekistan's ambitious national energy strategy to generate a quarter of electricity from renewable sources by 2030. This strategy aims for 3.8 gigawatts of hydro energy, 5 gigawatts of solar energy and up to 3 gigawatts of wind energy. Uzbekistan is to invest $2 million into the opening of garment factory in Kyrgyzstan, Uzbek Steel Promise Association of countries said on March 30. The announcement is seen as a result of negotiations between business circles of the two states that took place as part of Kyrgyz President Sadir Japarov's state visit in Uzbekistan on March 11.
The director of Nil Granite, working under Brand Samo, Akram Ganiyev, and Deputy Director of Uzbek Textile Prom, Danyar Habibullayev, inked the roadmap with Bishkek Free Economic Zone Director General Kudret Taychabarov. Uzbekistan is to rent 2-hectare area in the Free Economic Zone and to create a factory for 200 jobs. Kyrgyzstan is to provide the necessary infrastructure for the factory, adapt it to local construction standards, and help to obtain all necessary permits. The factory is set to produce high-quality clothing, meeting world standards. It will be exported to Eurasian Economic Union countries and beyond. According to Uzbekistan's Statistical Committee, the country exported $459.3 million worth of ready garment to foreign countries in 2020. Most of the goods were exported to Russia and Kyrgyzstan.
Uzbekistan's Interior Ministry and the German Agency for International Cooperation on Monday agreed to cooperate on the establishment of a project aimed at preventing violent extremism in Central Asia, the International Cooperation Department of Uzbek Law Enforcement Agency reports. The project aims at strengthening the state and civil society by improving preventive containment of violent extremism and strengthening the resilience of vulnerable populations to radicalization. The department notes that the deal implies the development of bylaws and a work mainly with the young population.
Germany is restricting the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine to those over the age of 60. The decision follows reports of cases of blood clots, known as cerebral sinus vein thrombosis. Of some 2.7 million people who have received the shot, Germany's vaccine regulator has recorded 31 cases of the rare brain blood disorder, which resulted in 9 deaths. All reports involved women aged between 20 and 63, with the exception of 2 cases. The new limit is another setback in Germany's already sluggish vaccination campaign. But Chancellor Angela Merkel said it was essential to maintain public trust.
The recommendations of the Vaccine Committee are based on the knowledge that experts have gathered over the past few weeks on very rare but very serious cases of thrombosis in people who have been vaccinated with AstraZeneca. These are findings that the Vaccine Committee and ultimately we too cannot ignore.
Millions of doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine have been safely administered around the world. Many European countries briefly stopped using the vaccine earlier this month while investigating rare cases of blood clots. Both the European Medicines Agency and the World Health Organization said in response that the benefits of the jab outweighed the risks. Nearly all countries have since resumed use of the vaccine, but France has restricted it to those over the age of 55. This week, Canada also suspended plans to give the vaccine to younger people, amid the same concerns about blood clots.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen how you're viewing, experiencing what happened to George Floyd has affected your life?
Day 2 of the murder trial of ex-Minneapolis cop Derek Chauvin brought emotional testimony from at least 2 eyewitnesses to Chauvin's deadly arrest of George Floyd last May. Darnella Frazier, the teenage girl whose cell phone video of the incident was seen around the world, cried when recalling that day, her face kept off camera due to her young age.
When I look at George Floyd, I look at my dad, I look at my brothers, I look at my cousins, my uncles, because they are all black, and I look at that and I look at how that could have been one of them. It's been nights I stayed up apologizing and apologizing to George Floyd for not doing more and not physically interacting and not saving his life. But it's like, it's not what I should have done. It's what he should have done.
With that, she turned to Chauvin, whose lawyers began to object to her response. Frazier was walking her 9-year-old cousin to buy snacks at a small grocery, where moments earlier a worker had accused Floyd of using a fake $20 bill, when she said she saw Chauvin with his knee on Floyd's neck.
I heard George Floyd saying, "I can't breathe, please get off of me. I can't breathe." He cried for his mom. He was in pain. It seemed like he knew. It was over for him.
Another witness, professional mixed martial arts fighter Donald Williams, who can be heard on Frazier's video hurling insults at police as he demanded they check Floyd's pulse, described on the stand why he called 911 after Floyd's arrest.
At some point, did you make a 911 call?
That is correct. I did call the police on the police.
Right. And why did you do that?
Because I believe I witnessed a murder.
He then dabbed his eyes with a tissue as a recording of that call was played back in the courtroom.
He told him to check the man's pulse, but they wouldn't even check the pulse.
Chauvin's lawyers have sought to convince the jury that Chauvin may have felt threatened by bystanders. They say he followed his police training and is not guilty of the charges brought by the Minnesota Attorney General's office of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, or second-degree manslaughter.
In South Texas, over 4,000 migrants are crammed into one facility, 4 times its capacity before the global health crisis. Most are unaccompanied minors. The Biden administration allowed reporters to tour this processing facility in Donna on Tuesday. Acting executive officer for U.S. Border Patrol in the region, Oscar Escamilla, said many of the children have gone through long and harrowing journeys on their own.
These kids cross by themselves. Obviously, the parent pays a fee to the smuggler. The cartel member or the smuggler at this point will bring the kid over. We'll bring him to the river. We'll hand him over to the raft. We'll place him in a raft and say, okay, go. When you get to the other side, they'll explain to them, there's going to be an officer. They'll explain what we wear and tell them, turn yourselves into them.
A top U.S. official said on Tuesday he expects more than 1 million migrants to arrive at the U.S.-Mexico border this year, a growing humanitarian challenge for President Joe Biden, as more people are driven to the border by poor economic conditions, natural disasters, and hope to stay in the U.S. under his administration. The Donna facility footage shared with Reuters showed young children sitting inside a playpen, some as young as 3 years old. More than 2,000 unaccompanied children have been held here for longer than a legal limit of 72 hours. Escamilla says these kids slipped through the cracks of the immigration system.
There's a little girl that I talked to a little while ago. She said that she had lost her mom and that she doesn't have a father. So she's coming into this country because her uncle is going to be the sponsor. So they want to take, this little girl is going into the States. And I asked her, what state are you going to? What's your final destination? She said, I don't know. All I know is that it snows there. That's all I know.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security said in a statement they were, quote, working around the clock to quickly move children out of the packed border facilities. The Government Health and Human Services Refugee Office did not immediately respond to a request for comment.
Votes on whether to form a union at Amazon's fulfillment center in Alabama were in the spotlight Tuesday, the results of which could set a lasting precedent for organized labor nationwide. An agent from the U.S. National Labor Relations Board will sift through ballots sent to more than 5,800 workers at the Bessemer, Alabama warehouse as part of a prolonged process expected to last days and spark legal challenges. Amazon has aggressively discouraged attempts by the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union to become the first ever to organize one of the online retail giant's facilities in the United States.
The people united will never be defeated.
The union drive has drawn significant attention from elected officials in Washington. A congressional delegation, including Democratic Representative Terry Sewell, visited Bessemer earlier in March.
People deserve a livable wage. It is unions that fight for that. And I am proud that the workers here in Bessemer, Alabama are following in the tradition, the long tradition of Alabamians willing to stand up for what is right, willing to march, and as John Lewis would say, peacefully protest their rights.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders descended on the area Friday to hold a rally with workers and support the organized push. Amazon has mounted its own campaign, sending text messages urging current and former workers to vote against forming a union and telling them that they might sacrifice certain benefits if the push succeeds, a notion the union has disputed.
T plus 545, we've just passed through 1 kilometer altitude, getting ready for the relay.
A frozen webcast was the first sign a SpaceX flight did not go as planned on Tuesday. The second sign was the audio that followed. And the subsequent commentary did not bode well for a successful landing either.
We're back with you. As you can see from the frozen camera view, we lost the clock at T plus 5 minutes 49 seconds. Looks like we've had another exciting test of Starship number 11. The frozen view we saw on the camera doesn't mean that we were waiting for the signal to come back. Starship 11 is not coming back. Don't wait for the landing.
SpaceX engineers said they were investigating why the unmanned Starship prototype rocket appeared to explode on its way back down to Earth after a test launch from Boca Chica, Texas.
We do appear to have lost all the data from the vehicle.
Debris from the spacecraft was found scattered 5 miles away from its landing site. Later, billionaire Elon Musk, the founder and CEO of SpaceX, said on Twitter, quote, "Something significant happened shortly after landing burn start. Should know what it was once we can examine the bits later today." The Starship was one in a series of prototypes for the heavy lift rocket being developed by Musk's private space company to carry humans and 100 tons of cargo on future missions to the Moon and Mars. Other Starship prototypes previously exploded upon landing during their test runs. Starship number 10 achieved an upright landing earlier this month, but then went up in flames about 8 minutes after touchdown.
A minor sell-off on Wall Street as investors kept an eye on interest rates for the 10-year note, which touched a 14-month high on Tuesday. High-flying growth stocks were hit again, which left the Dow, the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq all modestly lower by the closing bell. Tim Bray, a fund manager at Guidestone Capital Management, wasn't shaken by Tuesday's market action.
I think the mood of the market is still optimism. Investors are shying away from bonds. Yes, you've seen a little bit of a pullback in equities, but I still think it's an optimistic market. I still think it's a buy the dip market. We still see a lot of growth coming. So, it's still positive versus negative, I would say, today.
Bank stocks recovered as investors viewed the fallout from the problems at Archegos Capital as limited. Wells Fargo came out and said that while it had a relationship with the troubled hedge fund, it no longer had any exposure and did not experience any losses. That was enough to send shares of Wells Fargo up 2.5%. Consumer moods have been lifted by the vaccine rollout. Consumer confidence hit its highest since the health crisis began a year ago, according to a March survey by the Conference Board. The improving labor market and the good vibes from President Biden's $1.9 trillion economic relief plan are also bolstering confidence. With consumer spending responsible for 2/3 of all economic activity, that bodes well for the economic outlook.
So far, these were the latest news for today. Goodbye. Take care.